What were school environments like?
Polk County, Florida schools weren't integrated until around 1970.
It's up to expect the children to be something other than children. And as a result, we were wary. But as we integrated, it was obvious that we were just children.
African American schools had smaller budgets than white schools.
There were no black people allowed, not even on the premises, and our schools was very nice. And then you had the black schools in the black sections of town, and that's what they were referred to was, black communities. And they had their schools, and they weren't nearly as nice as ours. And as far as their books and all of their supplies, they weren't as nice either. And their buses, and we had the upper class equipment and buses and school supplies.
Did your parents have any African Americans working for them?
We had several African American people that worked for us. I had a mammy, for lack of the better word, that kept our house and kept me. My mother actually went to work away from home when I was in first grade, and I always had someone that worked in the house, and they had authority over me, and I treated them with a great deal of respect because they had the ability to discipline me or reward me. We had people that worked in the yard, and of course we had people that worked in the groves, and different jobs at the house or the yard or in the grove carried different caste implications. And that we were in the citrus business and we're citrus growers, and we had a great deal of interaction. There was a caste system within agriculture, but we always had a respect for one another that I don't think people that lived in town had the ability to experience or understood the value of human beings when you are, especially in ag, where there's a lot of, you're dealing with a perishable commodity, and there are difficult times, whether it's drought or freezes.
My dad, he picked fruit, and which was the most popular business that was in that time. That was in '63. And, as I was growing up and living in Auburndale, he owned a fruit picking crew, or owned the truck, and mostly black people worked for him. He was one of the few that treated them equal. And when they would start to the back door to get their paycheck, he would direct them to the front door, invite them in, and give them coffee and tea, just like he would anyone else. And we never looked at them as different growing up. We knew things were different, but we liked them because they would save us Twinkies in the truck.
Not being young, I wasn't aware of the separation of class, but I certainly do remember that there was a white drinking fountain and a black drinking fountain, and that there were different restrooms for blacks and white. In fact, there weren't restrooms for blacks. You'd see signs that said white only. I can't recall at the Woolworths counter if there was a sign that said that they could not be served, that African Americans could not be served, but I certainly remember the drinking fountain sign.
Almost all public areas had different drinking fountains for each race, labeled white and colored.
All my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay.
Did you have any African American friends?
Absolutely not. We never were around any growing up, and they had their jobs and their places to live, and their schools, and we had ours, and we stayed completely away from them. We never were around any black people except with my dad, and he worked he was a foreman over a black crew.
What were the reactions of the students when schools became integrated?
There was a lot of anger, but a lot of the anger had to do with us not understanding their culture, their community culture. And I think that they were taught to be defiant. There was a lot more than just Martin Luther King. There was a lot of Malcolm X. There was a lot of Black Panther. But there was also a lot of Hell's Angel in the white class too. There was a lot of fear in the country at that time, at all levels.
Are there any incidents you can recall?
The most important incident was we had a young man bring a handgun to school. I think he was in 4th grade, and he brought a pistol to school. And they took it away from him. It was a big, he wasn't defiant with him, he was just afraid. And he was a real big guy too. As a result of that, it was amazing that he was not expelled. But I think that it brought a real concern. I think for me, it made me wonder why he thought as a young person he would have to bring a gun to school. I didn't understand it. I truly didn't understand it.
In 1963, I moved to Birmingham and with some family member there. And I guess about 4 blocks from where we lived, the Birmingham church was bombed, and it was in the black section of town, and there was a road that went between us and the church, and of course they had it all sectioned off, but 4 little girls were killed in that bombing, and I guess it was the Ku Klux, and that's what we figured then, because they were very prominent in the community at that time, and there were a lot of them. Yes, there were a lot of riots in Birmingham, and I was just starting to drive at that time, and it was quite scary in Birmingham because that was one of the main places for riots and a lot of bombings and a lot of people being hurt and injured by the black people or the white people. A lot of marches, the marches through Selma. All the marches that went through Selma, Alabama, usually went through Birmingham and on up to Huntsville. Martin Luther King was very involved at that time.
4 innocent girls were killed at the bombing in the Birmingham church.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life.